Hello to anyone that's watching. I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while. I haven't been able to come up with a lot of the words that I wanted to say. However, I think it is a good time to go and do this video. So if you are watching and this has happened to you or someone close to you, my condolences. There's really not much that anyone could say to ease the pain of the loss of a child. There's just nothing anyone can say or do. If you or your spouse or anyone else that you're close to that this has happened to, and they're feeling extremely depressed and might hurt themselves or someone else, you should seek professional medical advice and get help right away. So with that being said, why am I doing this? I found when my son passed away about 3 years ago, there wasn't a lot of resources, especially for men, that, not that anything could be put my mind at ease or anyone's mind at ease, but just to let me know that I'm just not alone as a guy, all these feelings that I had. And this video isn't really directed all towards men. I'm sure many women also might get something out of this video also. I could only speak from a man's point of view, and you know, men and women really do think and feel differently at times anyways, and I really did find that was the case with my wife and I. There was some things out there that my wife could go to, and not that I was not welcome. However, you know, all the books at the meetings would say, you know, for the mothers, and there wasn't much for the fathers. And you know, it'd be great to have more men get out there to say what they have to say. I'm extremely happy women do have a lot of resources out there, so don't get me wrong on that. In a lot of ways, I'm sure women go through more, I'm not sure the word would be pain, but I'm sure they go through a lot more than men do. However, we can't forget the men out there, the fathers, or anyone, even in general, a grandparent that have lost a child, a grandchild, a child that's close to them. So SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, where the infant passes away just suddenly without any warning signs, and even with an autopsy, no clear signs of what happened. It is very emotional. There's just so many feelings that go through a person's mind right from the start, and will continue probably for the rest of your life. Does it get easier? I'm not sure if it would be, I would call it easier. You'll always have that scar. You'll always have the scar of losing a child. And when I'm talking about SIDS, I'm sure a lot of it could be put with any kind of child-related death, a miscarriage, a stillbirth. Your child could be a month old, 10 months old, a year old. You know, I mean, your child is your child. and parents should not outlive their children. So my experience with this is going back to January 2015. My son Noah, fourth child of mine, was born October 5th, 2014. Very healthy child, and you know, he had his first Christmas. Very healthy. Fast forward to January 10th. Again, right up to that point, very healthy, and there were no signs of that anything was wrong. The morning of the 10th, my wife had gotten up with our child, feed him, and put him back to bed around 6 o'clock in the morning. She went to bed for another hour or so. She had to work. It was a Saturday, so she was going to work and left here at 8:30. 8:30 after she left, I started to do some housework. I had the baby monitor on, and there was, again, there's no signs. It was totally normal for our son Noah to be sleeping. Around 9:30, checked the monitor again as I was finishing up some of the housework, and it was about 3.5 hours, and that's about the time that he'd be starting to get up soon. So instead I thought I'll go upstairs and get him up before, you know, gets up and cries. Why not? So went up to his room and did the whole, you know, touching the cheek a bit, just to stir him a little bit, and didn't get a response. I thought, okay, perhaps he's just really in a deep sleep. So I grabbed his hand and didn't really feel that reflex action that that a baby would usually do to close their hand. And it started getting me a little bit panicked. So I started trying to pick him up slowly. Again, I had no clue, and there was no resistance against me trying to pick him up. And I brought him to my face, and his eyes didn't open. So I started panicking, and I opened up his one eye, and you know, pupil didn't dilate. And then I yelled his name a couple times. I'm not sure what I was thinking, perhaps trying to startle him. I honestly don't know. Then everything just kind of kicked in. Holding him, I hurried up downstairs because I was on the second floor, got my phone, called 911, and as I was talking to the 911 operator, I started doing CPR, check the throat, make sure there's nothing in there, and then did infant CPR while the police and paramedics came. Didn't take them long, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and they were here. They took him, and so I bring him to the hospital, and the police officer just let me go into his vehicle on the way to the hospital. In the meantime, my wife is still working, and police officers go get her at work, and really can't tell her really nothing at the moment because they don't know much. I arrived at the hospital probably within 5 minutes. We got there through all the lights right away. We went into the back room in the emergency room. And they had him all hooked up. Basically, though, he had pretty much, there was no specific time of death, but they say probably he was gone for about an hour or so. a person doesn't know how they're going to feel until in that situation. It's the most surreal thing ever. Sometimes it even still feels like a dream. And again, my wife wasn't there yet. So after they did pronounce him that he was dead and they stopped everything, I was, sent to a family room until people got there. And then, my wife eventually showed up, and that was probably the hardest thing I ever really had to, I couldn't even, she came in and basically that look of how is he, and I couldn't even say it. I was in tears and I just shook my head no. And feeling like I caused that much pain for my wife was just, it was heartbreaking. So other family members had came to the family room. We were there for about an hour or so. Oh, maybe longer. After that point, I'm not sure too much about time. But the feelings that you go through so many. Of course, I think the biggest one was, how did this happen? And, that's even before the why. Because really, there's not really can't really answer the why question anyways, but how? Like, did anyone do anything wrong? When it's just that sudden, there's really nothing that anyone could have done differently. Even if you know the future, even if you didn't know the future, would we have done something else different? No. He got up in the morning for feeding, went back to bed, and he usually slept 3-4 hours. Usually, like, I wasn't expecting him up till about 10ish. But so I can't say exactly how my wife felt. Obviously horrible, and we both blamed ourselves. We didn't never blamed each other. We both blamed ourselves. Sure, could she have done something different when she put him back to bed that morning? Myself, if I would have went up there an hour earlier, would all that have made the difference? And I guess anyone in this situation would keep going, what if? But I think when it comes down to it, assuming we still didn't know the future and we were back there, would we have done anything different? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, it just happened again. It was sudden. There was no warning signs whatsoever. No one could tell you how to feel in this. No one can really put themselves in your position. Even as a guy, I can't put myself in another guy's position. We all feel differently. We all have different personalities. Someone might be able to handle it a bit better. Some people may not be able to handle it at all. In that point in time, you don't think you can handle it at all. Some people are stronger mentally than others. Again, this is from my perspective. So that's how it happened, of our experience. Again, you feel frustrated. You feel angry at no one specific, but it's there. You feel frustrated because you do want to know what happened. Sometimes you never get that answer. and we never did. Not specifically, it was SIDS. He passed away in his crib. But did his heart give out? Did his lungs stop? Did his brain just stop? There's no answer to that. They did an autopsy and couldn't find anything. So obviously that first week was, I'm sure you can imagine, was pretty horrible. Again, I don't really remember too much, although that the first maybe couple of days seems kind of blurred. We did have to leave our house for, it happened on Saturday till the Monday afternoon. The police did investigate, and that's their job. And, you know, pick up, take his crib sheets, basically anything that belonged to Noah, they have to take. And they have to do their investigation to rule anything out. So not only that, but we could not be even in our own place to start, I guess, somewhat grieving. We did stay at my wife's mom's house, and I don't remember too much about that. I remember getting questioned by Children's Aid and the police, and that's normal. A child did die in the house, so that's a normal thing. He was, 3 months and 5 days old, so there's not too much to go on, because he was just asleep in his crib. Eventually we were allowed back in our house, and that probably was then the second time that hit me, but I'm sure both of us, my wife and I, where you come in the house and now you see the baby things. You see the toys, the diapers, the wipes, the pictures, and just know that your child won't be back. Ever. And that hits you hard. At the hospital on the Saturday, when it all first happened, I had gotten really good advice because the feeling after he had passed away was, I just want to get rid of everything. I guess maybe to block the feelings of losing him. However, I had gotten a good advice where he had told me to grab all his stuff in the house and put it into his room, his nursery, and just close the door and get to it at a later date. And I'm very, very glad this person, my pastor, had told me to do. I think getting rid of stuff right away in the end would have probably hurt a lot if I didn't keep any special things of Noah's. I think I would have regretted that. In the meantime, we got set up for a funeral, and my wife, as I'm sure you probably imagine, was going downhill from there. And I was trying to block it out because it seems like that is what guys are supposed to do when something this traumatic happens. We're supposed to, a lot in society, the guys should block it off and man up and take care of things. So of course that is what I attempted to do, and started making funeral arrangements. My wife was going downhill, and I got a call saying that she wanted to hurt herself and basically die. So, no matter what the situation is, you definitely have to make sure that your spouse is taken care of. There was a lot of stuff that needed to be done and prepared for the upcoming funeral, and I couldn't be there for my wife. So I had to make the hard choice of that if I couldn't be there, that I would have to put her in the hospital for a bit anyways, to make sure she's safe and get any help that she needs at the time. And so I phoned her. I asked her. In my head, I had already decided I was going to, whether she agreed with it or not, and if that made her angry, so be it. I did ask her, though, if she needed to go to the hospital, if she thought she would hurt herself, and she actually did agree, so I let her go, and I phoned the hospital to go pick her up, and she went into the hospital to get help. And she was in there for not quite a week. In the meantime, I still had to make the funeral arrangements, and feeling like I had to do everything myself. And I know other people were around. In fact, like the person that had given me the good advice on keeping all Noah's stuff in his room, my pastor had actually came with me to help do all the funeral arrangements and stuff like that, which I really appreciated. I don't think anyone else knew how to talk to me, what to even say. And there's really not much a person can say in the situation. And I think anyone in that situation, I think just does want to know, though, that someone is there. Even if you don't know, even if the person doesn't know what to say, just let them know that, you know, you're there if you need it. Anyways, again, I'm still trying to keep it bottled up because that is what it's expected of me and usually men in general. But I could tell it was spilling over a bit. In the meantime, my other children were, my ex had taken the children to keep them, you know, since, I mean, again, my wife was in the hospital, and I mean, really, I wasn't all that in great shape mentally, emotionally, so she ended up taking them, which I'm, you know, again, very appreciative. She was a big help, actually, and, you know, just taking care of the boys that we shared custody with. Then the funeral comes, and my wife was allowed to go out of the hospital. We picked her up, brought her there, and the funeral, as you can imagine, it's very emotional, mentally, and emotionally, it's draining. Anyways, it's probably going to be the most toughest experience I probably have and ever will go through. So eventually my wife did come out. She was in there for about 5 or 6 days in the hospital. By that time, the funeral was done, and you know, we were able to be in the house, not in our son's room, mind you, still. We didn't get to that for about a month. We couldn't go in there. But my wife and I were there for each other. And they say that a lot of couples break up, or quite a bit, after the loss of a child. And I guess my take on it is it doesn't have to. It just doesn't have to. SIDS is not anyone's fault. You may blame yourself because of something you may have done differently if you would have known. But blaming the other person won't accomplish anything. And losing your spouse at this time of need, you're just depriving really both of yous that chance for the other person to be there for you. We both understood where moody, angry, frustrated, it's good to get help if you need it. It's good to have friends that you can trust that will stay neutral and objective throughout it. My wife would talk to someone that had lost a child a couple years before that, and she was a good person for my wife to talk to. I talked to the senior pastor at the church, and he was excellent to talk to and stayed objective. To all the guys out there, your feelings matter. They really do. And it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to cry. It really is. And it's okay to be there for your spouse. It's okay to ask if there's anything you can do. Us guys do like to try to fix things. And I think that might frustrate us a lot, that we can't fix this for our spouse. And we can't fix it. But we can be there for them. And let your spouse be there for you. And that is really important. The spouses want to be there for each other. And the other one needs to let them do that. It's really, really important. So, does it get any easier day to day? I guess it could. It does. Day to day stuff, it's not always on my mind. It's been about 3 years. Today is March 25th, 26th of 2018. A couple times a day, I still think of him. Of Noah. So, but that's compared to thinking of him all the time and not sleeping and still thinking. It, I guess, has become somewhat easier. The first month after it happened, it was, again, as you can imagine, extremely difficult. My wife and I were there for each other, especially when the other person was just weak, and I shouldn't say weak, were emotionally vulnerable. And just to let the other person know that we are there and, we love them. And again, men and women at times think and feel a bit differently at times, but so do individuals in general. So you might have someone that may push you away. You may have someone that just wants to cuddle and be right there. In our situation, my wife wanted to push me away and didn't think she deserved any happiness. Even, after a few weeks, a month, she didn't feel like she deserved it. Myself, I just wanted to be close. And doesn't exactly work out very well. However, talking to people who could be neutral and that can get you to think about the other person's side, that helps a lot. And I guess my biggest advice for that part is be patient and talk. Just talk, be patient. It won't be forever. And let them know that you love them. You're there for them. And I think that's one of the most important things. Because we feel alone in these situations. I mean, guys and girls, we feel alone. And we're not, but we feel like we are. And as a guy, I really, really, really felt alone. Guys don't usually talk about these things together. When sometimes women join groups, there's a lot of groups possibly for things like this. You can get a lot of women talking about it and support each other. Guys, there's not so much, or it does take a lot more research to find out exactly where online maybe there's some support groups, forums, YouTube videos, anything that another guy can relate to. And I didn't find much out there. And that's one of the reasons why I am doing this video. Because you're not alone. And you may feel you're alone, but you're not. There's a lot of guys, I would imagine, that feel the same as me. That you feel alone, but you feel like you have to hold it in. Especially hold it in because of your spouse. And the thing is, no, you really don't. There might be times, maybe specific times, where you do to take care of stuff, like a funeral for your child, or when I had to call to put my wife in the hospital. Have to bury that just for that little bit so you can get that job done, really. But you are allowed to feel that, and it's okay, and it's you should feel that. You also do need to get help. And whether that is talking to a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, a pastor, a friend that could be neutral, all those can help. So you don't want to keep it in too long. Venting it out is definitely a good thing, and you definitely should do it. It's been about a month after we eventually did go through his room, and that was hard, as you can imagine, and just going through his clothes and stuff like that, his toys. We did make a bin, one of those plastic bins, and we did put some of the most memories we have of, say, some of his outfits and maybe of a blanket or so. We put in a bin, and we call it his Noah bin. And that also has a photo album and different little things to remember him by. That was about a month afterwards. I did most of it. My wife was still having a very hard time with it. And that's okay. That's okay. If I was unsure whether something should go or stay, I did ask, especially if it was something, she personally got him. And she was fine with those little things. But she had a hard time. And it was. I can only do maybe 10 minutes at a time. So after thinking about all this, like I said, it's been about 3 years later. Is there any advice, any tips? That first year is going to be hard. You got to prepare yourself for that. Those holidays that your child should have been but is not there, that's going to be hard. That first birthday, and probably every birthday after that, but especially that first birthday after your child passes away, is going to be especially hard. Knowing that it will be hard, it's a good idea to prepare yourself. You and your spouse can prepare yourself a little bit, even if it's talking about it before and after, during the day. And just know that if someone is feeling depressed or sad that day, or even snapping at each other, it's alright. It's not meant for that other person specifically. Again, patience and communication is key for this by both people. We usually put on a candle for him on his first birthday and on the day he passed away. It's hard, but we do want to keep him in our memories. We do have a few pictures up now in the living room and kitchen and that. He was and is part of our family. And sometimes it's easier to push that back, push it away, and try to pretend it didn't happen. Is that the right thing to do? I don't know. All I can tell you is what we did. And at times, I guess we tried to in a way, but he was and is, he's our family. And he deserves to be remembered. And I think I personally think that's a good thing. Other things to consider is your other children. Questions will be asked, and you don't necessarily have to tell exactly what happened. You do have to be mindful of their age. There's not really an easy way to tell kids that their little brother passed away. There's a lot of whys, and it's not easy. Be honest, but be age appropriate when you are talking to them. I guess that's the best advice I can give for that. No matter what anyone says, you're allowed to feel the way you want to feel. You're feeling like that because for a reason. Even if someone says, it's been years, haven't you got over it? No. Maybe you haven't gotten over it. That's okay. That's alright. It will probably be a scar with you for the rest of your life. there's not too much really that anyone will be able to say to help you take away those feelings. And in fact, people may unintentionally make it worse. Especially at the beginning when they're not sure what to say. Like, the infant's in a better place. That doesn't really go well when you lose a child. Maybe if the child was sick for a long time, I guess I could maybe understand that. But when it was so sudden and there was no health problems, that our child smiled so much. He was a happy little boy. And for someone to say he's in a better place, no. I think the best place would be with your parents. So, but I do know that these people mean well. So try to have patience for these people. And if you're a person that does say that, if you're not sure what to say, just don't say nothing, or maybe your condolences and you're there for them. It's probably better than saying he's in a better place. There's many things that people might say that might upset you. Try to understand that they are probably trying to do their best of trying to console you. And it didn't work, because not much will. I don't think anyone really consoled me to that extent. But again, I guess knowing, after a lot of it happened, knowing my wife was there, and I could talk to my wife. But when I have bad days, and I still have bad days, there's still days when I will think of him. And, my wife knows how I am, and if I seem a bit off, she'll ask, and I'm honest, and we'll tell her, and we'll talk about it for a little bit. And I do the same for her. And I think that's really important. And it may be like that for the rest of our lives. I don't know if this video will help anyone. I'm doing this in the hopes that it will. I tried to stay organized with my thoughts, and I realized I might have rambled a bit. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to comment below. I'm not too knowledgeable in other things like this. I'm not a counselor or a psychologist, no, I'm not a therapist of any sort. But if a video about something else on this subject you would like, feel free to ask, and I definitely will try to answer whatever questions that I can. And I just, to the guys, but I guess everyone out there, it's okay to feel, it's okay to ask for help, and be there, for your spouse, and let your spouse be there for you. It's important. Okay, so just try and take care. And again, if you do need professional help, or someone that needs professional help, call right away. It's important. The last thing you want is someone else hurting themselves, or you losing someone else. So, take care.